So we've got now Sam McGill speaking for the Revolutionary Communist Group and our campaign in solidarity with Cuba and Revolutionary Latin America, Rock Around the Blockade. Sam is a regular contributor to articles on Venezuela, carried in Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. She, as well, alongside our comrade Destiny Sanchez, who's currently in Cuba, they visited Venezuela in November 2024 and January 2025 to participate in the anti-fascist congresses and the mobilizations accompanying the inauguration of President Nicolas Maduro. So Sam, thank you so much for your time, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the speakers so far. It's been really useful. And yeah, I think I just sort of building on what Sarah put in the chat there, just about, the idea of the popular consultations. To me, it really highlights the difference between representative democracy and participatory democracy. These exercises are not just about handing out resources. Obviously that's a really important part of it, that whole communities have been pummeled by the sanctions for all of these years, and the economic blockade and the crisis. And it's about trying to make sure that the resources that are needed to recover things in the community, whether that be a health module, whether that be repairing water pipes, whether that be a road, providing an ambulance, for example, then it's really important. However, the whole process is about participation from the initial, communal assemblies that are discussing and debating and putting forward what projects that they want to put to the vote in the first place, to then voting on them, to then actually receiving the resources. It's not that just the local kind of municipality will receive the resources, and somebody in a completely different office somewhere will decide which contractor gets picked or whatever. It's actually putting those resources in the hands of the people, and then the people in the communes are the ones who are organizing to put it into practice, so that they're actually involved in the planning, the election, and the execution of the local communal plans. And we interviewed somebody called Hernan Vargas from the Pobladores movement. This was back in August. There's an article on our website about it. And something he said just really resonated with me. That he was saying, this the system of popular consultations is part of building the popular governmental system, and it has the communes at the center. He was saying that it's at the same time the antidote to corruption, because the communities can manage the resources directly, and the commune has the political duty to render account, not only to the state, but to the people. So they have to assemble the community to evidence what funds were given and how they were spent. And this is also seen as an antidote to bureaucracy, because there's no need for intermediaries, there's no need for middlemen. So it's part of kind of developing, obviously it's about getting resources into the hands of the people and in making those economic improvements that are so needed. But it's also the whole process that they're going through is actively strengthening the communal movement in itself. And I know, maybe this is something we can touch on in the discussion, but at the moment there is a constitutional reform taking place. Because when the original constitution, the new constitution that was formed from a constitutional assembly process in 1999, which was very participatory from what I understand, that was one of the first things that Chavez did when he won power in 1998. He started to call for a reform of the constitution and engaged people from lots of different areas of society to talk about, well, what kind of constitution do we need? Obviously, the communes and the communal councils, they didn't come along in Venezuela till later, as Sira has explained. So now there is a debate about, how the communes are going to be kind of consolidated in the constitution as a constituent power. So it might be interesting to talk about that in the discussion. I don't know a lot about it other than just a few bits I've read, but it's again an indication that the communal movement is going from strength to strength. I wanted to say that, yeah, I know Zoom can be a bit laggy sometimes, and the documentary that is coming out in a week's time, it features a lot of the interviews and kind of footage that we took, particularly in El Panal commune. So if you're interested in understanding more about, economic units of production and that, are kind of developed from within the commune, that will be coming out in a week's time, freely available on YouTube, and we really want to get that as far and wide as possible. And it obviously features a lot of El Panal's amazing communes and amazing comrades, and highlights their projects, as well as people from the campesino movement, people who were talking about the popular participatory consultations in other communes, interviews with the Ministry of Communes, officers. So yeah, if we can get that out as far and wide as possible, that would be great. And really wanted to just thank Danny Danieski for all the work that he's done on that, because it's going to be an incredibly useful tool for us in Britain, kind of explaining what exactly are the communes in Venezuela and why they are important. I also just wanted to highlight the book that I think was in the chat that is called Commune or Nothing, which is a book by Chris Gilbert, and I know Sarah was involved in a lot of that research also. It's in English, and it is, if you want to understand more about the communal movement in Venezuela, I would just recommend you to get that book, because it sort of goes through various communes in Venezuela, in rural areas, in urban areas, and just kind of explains, their politics and their organization and the challenges that they are facing. And it's a really useful insight into the communal movement. Okay, I think, the main points that I want to make tonight before we move to the discussion is that, the commune movement in Venezuela, like obviously it's very inspiring, but it's also part of Venezuela's role internationally. And we have to understand that, for these 25 years, the Chavista movement has fought to take control over Venezuela's oil resources and plow this wealth into social programs, into healthcare, into housing, but also into regional programs. So on the international stage, Venezuela, alongside socialist Cuba and other progressive movements in the continent, have forged regional alternatives to neoliberalism. We can look at the ALBA, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Americas, trade bloc, which is based on mutual development and exchange, or Petrocaribe, a program that had been launched previously to provide subsidized oil to the Caribbean, or CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, which was providing an alternative to US-dominated Organization of American States. And of course, Venezuela stood steadfast in solidarity with Palestine, with the Alliance of Sahel States in West Africa, with Lebanon, against the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. They cut off ties with Israel in 2009. So for us in Britain, when we go to a protest for Palestine, or Black Lives Matter, or in solidarity with migrants under attack, we bring the Venezuelan flag, we bring the Cuban flag, we bring the Palestinian flag, and we make the connections. And it's really important for us because it's part of building the anti-imperialist consciousness that's needed for a revolutionary movement in Britain. And Britain is the oldest imperialist country in the world. Racism, imperialist chauvinism, individualism, and anti-communism run deep. And bringing these, consciousness of these struggles is important in kind of challenging that. And Venezuela's record, and more specifically the communal movement, it's hardly known in Britain, and I'm assuming in Europe as well. And it's hardly known within the left as well. And if people know anything about Venezuela, it is usually the same old media tropes about dictatorships and economic crisis. Many people don't understand the connection between the Bolivarian Revolution and the movement for social justice in the imperialist heartlands. So it's our role to bring the example of Venezuela into the movements and spaces that we organize in, to make those connections. As Ghassan Kanafani, a Palestinian Marxist author and activist, poetically declared, imperialism has laid its body over the world. the head in Eastern Asia, the heart in the Middle East, and its arteries reaching Africa and Latin America. Wherever you strike it, you damage it, and you serve the world revolution. Well, Venezuela is striking at imperialism every day, and it is connected to our struggle here in Britain. So with the popular consultations and the proposals to reform the constitution, it's clear that the communal movement is going from strength to strength in Venezuela. And we have to get this message out there. But also we need to explain that this process is fully backed by President Nicolas Maduro, because there's also this aspect within the Western left that people try to draw a distinction, saying that they support the communal movement, but they oppose the Maduro government and the Venezuelan state, who they label as anti-democratic or a dictatorial regime. And we have to expose that this is an impossible distinction. We interviewed Angel Prado, a communal leader from the renowned El Maizal commune, who is today Minister of Communes. And this interview is in the documentary, by the way. And he emphasized that it was Chavez and the United Socialist Party government that first, gave the impetus and the resources for the communes to grow. And likewise, it is the communes and the working class who've repeatedly organized to defy sanctions and coup plots and prevent the overthrow of the Bolivarian revolution. So you can't separate one from the other. And I don't know if, Jacob, you don't mind sharing the picture I sent. It's just some photographs, really, of the people on the streets. This was in July and August around the elections. They were coming out week after week and day after day, actually, to defend the Bolivarian process against the imperialist destabilization. I mean, the streets are full, and this is not just in Caracas. This is in many cities around the country. And we saw this again in January when we were in Venezuela for the mobilizations around the inauguration. And again, some of this footage is in the trailer and in the documentary. So you can really see the popular support that is making this revolutionary process a continued reality. And, you never see these pictures in the mainstream media. It's completely suppressed. And you never hear about the popular participatory democracy of the communal movement in the press, because that actually runs against their narrative that there is no democracy in Venezuela. They can't talk about the communal participatory democracy because it actively undermines their narrative. Of course, you can stop sharing now. Thanks, Jacob. Of course, this process is not without its contradictions, and the Venezuelan revolutionaries are constantly working to challenge this. The Bolivarian Revolution, they inherited the capitalist oil rentier state, where the key levers of the economy were in the hands of the oligarchs and the monopolies. This system of participatory democracy that's central to the communal movement that we've heard about runs alongside a traditional electoral structure of mayors, of governors, the national parliament. The communal units of social production operate alongside the private market. Rural communes and the campesinos have increased food production, but so has Venezuela's privately owned agribusiness sector. Campesinos collectives continue to occupy and fight for land titles, enforcing the 2004 land law, but they face violence and assassination by latifundio large landowners and their paramilitary hitmen. We have to understand that this is a class struggle on all fronts. And beyond the class struggle on a national level, the Venezuelan state has had to employ all sorts of methods to survive in the face of constant imperialist intervention and blockade. And this has included making alliance with sections of the private sector just to guarantee food supply. To apply a rigid Eurocentric blueprint of what a revolution has to look like is to reject the essence of Marxist dialectics. And as Lenin says, whoever expects to see a pure social revolution will never live to see it. So we need to start from the fact that we're here in Britain, the belly of the beast, the oldest imperialist nation in the world, the same Britain that attacked Venezuela's borders in the 1840 commissioning of the infamous Schombuck Line, which claimed the Orinoco River mouth for the British Empire, the same imperialist Britain that is home to the aristocratic Vesti family, which grew rich acquiring cattle ranches in Venezuela, driving land clearances and ethnic cleansing, and the same imperialist Britain that today hoards 1.4 billion pounds of stolen Venezuelan gold in the coffers of the banks of England. If we oppose British imperialism, we have a duty to support Venezuela's struggle for sovereignty. So for us as socialists, communists, anti-imperialists, anti-capitalists, progressives in Britain, the communal movement and the Bolivarian Revolution is such an important political reference. It's a beacon of inspiration, is a concrete example of how an alternative to capitalism can be built. And we have a duty to learn from these examples. Our two main tasks, I would argue, in Britain is firstly to fight the media war, to build consciousness about what's really going on in Venezuela, to make links between the struggles and protests on the streets in Britain, and expose the lies of capitalist outlets like The Guardian, who pose as left but take every opportunity to attack the Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution and repress news about the communal movement and mass social movements in Venezuela. And of course, we also have to fight against Britain's role in the economic war against Venezuela, demanding the return of the gold, challenging the coercive measures that are applied by the government. So we invite people in Britain to protest with us at the Bank of England. We've got some events coming up. I think it's 2nd of April. We'll be outside the Bank of England or outside the Guardian, where we're often outside the Guardian in solidarity with Venezuela. And we always try and carry news and information about Venezuela and other anti-imperialist struggles around the world in every issue of our newspaper, Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. And, you know, we really just need to make sure that we continue to learn from Venezuela, continue to learn from the communal movement, because we have so much to learn here in Britain and we have a world to win. So viva Venezuela, long live the Bolivarian Revolution, comuna or nada.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was amazing. And yes, echoes absolutely our feelings from the revolutionary group, Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism, of our duty to be in solidarity with Venezuela and what that looks like from within Britain.